Could you give me a little overview of your career?
I started in traditional animation back in the 80s, and I was fortunate enough to get into computer graphics in the mid 80s. And at the time, it was very primitive. But I used my traditional animation skills and was really hoping that I could, do some decent animation with this. And from there, I ended up, taking software that was basically coding and stuff like that. And as it evolved, I sort of followed it and worked my way into learning softimage, and ended up starting a little with Rick Ostigi at Buzz here in Montreal. And he hired myself and my brother, and the three of us worked out of a garage with a couple of machines. We did the first major campaign in 3D for Quebec. So, and then everything just snowballed from there.
I didn't know you were from Montreal.
Yes.
Ah, nice.
Yeah.
So you've been traveling a lot after that.
Yes, I've been traveling a lot. I essentially did about 2 years in commercials, and then worked for Softimage as a technology or lead animator, and worked with the Special Projects group. And we part of the launch of Softimage on the PC the first time, which was great. And then from there, I was a partner in Voodoo Arts, and from there did some more commercials. I think did between 80 and 90 campaigns, all told, from the first few projects I did. And ended up my skills in filmmaking and with animation and with photography and stuff led me into supervising on set. I was very comfortable on set, so I started supervising commercials, and then from there went on to features.
And when you say supervising commercials or features, what exactly are your duties on set?
Well, essentially, we look at what needs to be done in terms of the visual effects. And I will sit with the director, and we will design essentially what stuff's going to look like, first of all. Second of all, how we're going to approach it. How we're going to shoot the material, make sure the material is all shot, make sure all the data is correct, gather data about lenses and cameras and everything else, take it back to the vendor, and then start the post with the plates, make sure everything's aligned, do the tracking, and my job is basically to oversee the entire process from the first time looking at the script all the way to the end.
Wow. And for your latest projects, you've been working in the previs department, but also in the post-vis department. Could you explain the process a little?
Let me. I'm a freelance supervisor, and I've done full supervision for production from start to finish. And recently, I took a step back from that and did supervise just the post-vis end of Captain America. I just, it's Marvel. I just wanted to do it, and it just seemed like a perfect fit. It was a company that I knew very well, and I had an absolutely great time doing it. And it's it's a process I would repeat, since I was fortunate to work on films with a director that was really very enamored with the process of pre-vis and post-vis, and we kind of had a very good relationship, and I really love that process, the idea that you're taking shots to nearly final, and they become this fantastic template that goes to vendors, and they end up doing the shots, and the shots end up not having to come back for major revisions because they look like the previous. So it's a process where you feel like you're right on the front edge of creation with the director and with editorial, and so I really enjoy that process a lot.
Is it a process that is popular currently with movies, or is it just starting?
No, I think it's more and more films are doing this. Certainly the huge tentpole films, they have no choice. This is a process that is so important because of the amount of shots and how precise they have to be and how precise everyone has to work. And it's harder for a smaller production to convince production that it's a good idea to spend 3 to 6 months before they begin shooting to plan their shots. And it really depends on the director. Some directors don't like this idea of actually directing the film before they set foot on the shoot. And I think if they're properly educated as to what the advantages are in terms of planning visual effects, I think it's going to make a change. But we're seeing a big change in the industry. People are becoming used to visual effects people on set and getting the visual effects plate shots. So I think it's going to change.
Good, good. And why did you choose working in this field? What motivates you?
Well, I kind of have a split brain. I come from an artistic background, but I'm a techno geek. I love technology, and I've always wanted to dabble in it, and I love film, and even at a young age, I taught myself animation, and I love the idea of computer graphics, and it's something where I can walk the line between the artistic side and between the technology side, and my favorite thing to do is to solve problems. How can we do this shot that seems impossible?
And after so many years of experience in the industry, how do you manage to stay creative, stay passionate as you are?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I have I'm fortunate that I'm freelance, and I have an opportunity to sort of pick my projects a little bit, and that because it's always a different set of creative people, I'm learning from every one of them. I've worked with older directors, I've worked with young directors, and all of them have a completely different vision, completely different approach. So it's I think the long hours that everybody talks about, it's true, it does get to you. The travel is a bit difficult sometimes. You're away for a long time, but there it is. I get to see the world. I get to solve all these creative problems. I get to work with very creative people. So it's always a bit inspiring. There is a little bit of nervousness sometimes when I look at a job, and sometimes you end up working with people that are difficult. But in the end, I learned so much.
With your recent project, The Grey, Captain America, we can see really a difference between the budget and
Yes.
how those films are shot.
Yes.
So how do you manage to keep the quality high even though the resources are different?
That's a good question. I think part of it is when the vendors get on board, they tend to be very passionate about getting the shots right. I tend to be very passionate about it, and obviously it starts from the director. If the director is really inspired, everybody's going to pull up their socks and try to make it work. And it was a real challenge on some of these shows because there's that understanding that how are we going to do this? We have so little money, we have so little time, and I just say it's heroic kindness from the vendors that that they were willing to step up to the plate. I think it's patently unfair. I think the business sometimes can be just a little bit too brutal, and there's a race to the bottom for visual effects. Everybody wants the lower price and they want it faster, and I think VFX has been the industry itself has been suffering from these issues and these problems, and so it's a matter of educating production and and the vendors not basically sticking to their bids, and I know how tough it can be because nobody wants to lose a show over 5 shots, and I just hopefully I can try to keep them inspired. And yeah, it's a challenge. It's a real challenge.
Do you think previs, like you're doing right now, helps evaluate more properly the needs for VFX? Because currently the industry is a little bit broken. We've seen big companies with amazing projects just go bankrupt.
Right. I don't think previs is another tool, and it works really well for certain productions, and for some it's not necessary, and it could be just overkill. And when I say that is usually for the smaller productions. On a Marvel film, you can't live without it. And I think on a lot of other productions, previs really helps to inform not only the story. It informs things like where to put the cameras in tight places, how large green screen will we need, So you can get a lot of information from doing proper previs, and it can be used as a tech tool both on set and before they end up going out and shoot. So I think I have worked with directors who they're perfectly comfortable with storyboard, and so that is their previs, and then we work with the plates afterwards, and it does make a bit of a difference in the end, but again, it's the nature of the story. Certainly a comic book movie, it certainly benefits from it.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
And over all of your career, you must have encountered a few difficulties.
Yes.
What has been the biggest obstacle?
The biggest obstacle? I think the biggest obstacle is budget and time. Together. If you do, and time and budget are completely related. The more time you put on a film, the more it costs. And so, if we've been in that situation too, where there does come a point where it doesn't matter how much money you throw at a situation, if you don't have the time to do it, it's just not going to work. And it's this idea of like telling an artist to draw faster. It's not going to make it any better. And so there have been those situations where that becomes a reality. I think that will always be the biggest obstacle. Certainly, the other obstacle is finding the right talent fit for a project. Finding the right vendors and making sure that they can deliver the job. And certainly, I've had my challenges on set as well. Dealing with either directors who don't understand the process, or productions who are the production itself not really caring about what happens at the end, and so they'll eat through the contingency, and then you have no money left over to sort of balance out.
And what advice would you give either your younger self or people who are aiming to do your position right now?
Learn as much as you can. Go out there, find a camera, and shoot. I think probably that's one of I think that's even Stanley Kubrick said this. Just pick up a camera and start shooting. It'll inform so much. It'll tell you learn so much about as a visual person about what cameras do in the real world, and have a greater understanding of what comes into that lens and what ends up in on your plate at the end. Be incredibly observant. Understand physics and in an intuitive sense. Understand how things move. Look at how look at forensically at images, and just basically see what makes an image look real and what doesn't. It's all kind of real world experience. I think that would be the number one thing. If you want to go become a storyteller, just start telling stories and just see if it works.
Yeah. What is next for you?
What is next for me? I'm looking for the next creative challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah. I certainly want to try and do something I haven't quite done before. Fortunately, each movie is a little bit of a different animal, but I think I'd love somebody to throw a creative challenge at me, where it's something that I was never seen before. I'd love to do a period piece. I'd love to work on a period film. The difference between working on a science fiction film and a period piece is that in science fiction, they have the latitude to keep changing things all the way to the very, very end. Whereas when you're doing a period piece, a tank is a tank, and it looks like this, and we have the reference. We have all the visual reference in the world. So I'd like to try a little bit of everything. I'd love to try a little bit more character animation. That would be really great.
Great. Thank you so much for spending the time to talk to me. It was really nice.